Alright, YouTube, let's do another one. We're going to do a full teardown here on a Husqvarna 350. This process is the same for the 340, 345, 350, most of the 351, 346 XP series, stuff like that. The magnesium crankcase ones are a little different after you get past the top end, but for the most part they're the same. So, start by taking off the kill switch wire, undoing the little tab on the throttle rod, pulling the throttle rod out, using the flathead to pry the carb body out of these grommets. I already made a video on replacing the carburetor on one of these saws. So for more detailed, you can refer to that. Pinching off the fuel line so I don't get any stinky mess on my bench. These grommets don't usually fight me, but of course the time I'm making a video on taking the saw apart, this one's going to. But there we go. We got her. Take out the two 4mm Allen bolts that hold the carburetor on. I am using the M18 Milwaukee gun. They're the cat's ass. You can't get any better electric cordless tools out there, in my opinion. And hook the primer return line right there. Taking out the handle bolts for the wrap handle. These are all 4mm Allens. Everything is going to be a 4mm Allen until you get to the 4 base bolts that hold the cylinder coupling on, or spacer, I guess you'd call it. We'll see that in a bit. Zing zing. Oh, that one's a little dirty. Clean it out. See, I thought this would be a good video to make. I already know this saw is blown, so I know that it's getting rebuilt, or possibly, if the customer decides to. So we tear them all the way down so we can make a comprehensive list of what they actually need. This customer was running this with only one muffler bolt. He did not want that issue rectified. He said it was fine like that. He's a moron. As you can see, it melted the shit out of the crankcase. Do not run these with one muffler bolt. It's a common problem this series of saw has. If you do run it with one, you are stupid. Totally unapologetic in that. Taking those out, the little spacers for the brake handle, also 4mm Allens. They're both the same on both sides, so no sense in separating them. Some of these saws have a metal spacer that sits underneath the brake handle on that side. This one doesn't. Taking out the recoil screws. That line just pops off. The other one is screwed down underneath the coil. Well, it's screwed to the coil. Take the coil bolts out. I like to put these back in after I remove the coil, just so you don't get any shit in there. And also, you can see that one right there has a little brass clip on it. Your best bet is to leave that clip right in place. If you put the saw back together after a full rebuild and you leave that clip out, you'll have no spark and it will drive you crazy, and yeah, you'll have to tear the whole thing down again, basically. Or you could pop out the one screw that holds it in on the base and run the risk of an air leak. So best just not forget that step. I just put in the piston stop, knocking the flywheel off now. Remember, get it flush with the end of the bolt. I grabbed my 8-ounce hammer at first, and then I remembered that I got myself a newfangled new to me, brass hammer. Always better to use brass if you can. Square wax, unlike the first two that I put on this one that were quite obviously not square with the crank. You get a square hit and the flywheel 9 times out of 10 will pop right off. No problems. Just shaking the dirt out. That's the tension spring for the brake handle. That one was messed up. Removing the air conductor. Flipping her over. What are we going to do now? Take the clutch off. That's a Husqvarna clutch tool that I'm using right there. I don't have the part number off the top of my head. But they also put slots, as you can see right above my fingers right there. There's a slot in the side so you can block the piston and put the flat head edge of the scrunch against it and whack it with a hammer to get it off that way. Sometimes it works better. I use this clutch tool a lot, as you can see, so it's kind of stretched out. I had to bang it back together. Yep, the mess in my bay. Like I said, we're a pretty high volume shop, so there's always an abundance of junk. That clutch is pretty blued. It's hard to see it on the camera, but if the metal has a bluish tint to it, then you've been getting it overheated and it should be replaced. It actually changes the metallurgy of the metal and tempers it, which makes it easier to break. That little shroud didn't have to come off. I took it off just for whatever. I'm not going to remove the oil pump in this video. It's only one screw, if I remember right. Yeah, one screw that holds it on, and it pops right out. No problem. Take the mount screws out. Take this one out. Those are all 4mm Allens. Keep going with that one. Oh yes, yes, yes. My dog Carolyn's giving me kisses. She's wondering what I'm doing on the computer. Ah, back off. Alright. Get all the bolts out, unhook the primer return line, and the handle will pop right off. Just like that. Now you're down to the bare crankcase. You can take the piston stop out now. Take the 4 bolts that hold the cylinder down off first. As you can see, I kind of slam my bit in there. That's just a habit I've developed to kind of push through the gunk. A lot of times it'll give you enough bite to just whack the cylinder off, instead of taking the time to clean out the little holes and blah 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 blah. Checking the intake boot here. I didn't realize when I was making it that my hands were so close into myself. I have to stand kind of awkward with the glasses I wear to do this, with my hands stretched out in front of me. And I didn't hit it this time, but basically you just pull the boot out like that. Inspect it. Usually these boots will rip around that little nipple right there, and that will blow a saw up quick. That's the most common failure point I see on this series of saws specifically, is that little impulse nipple. But this piston's scored. That black glazing right there around the piston is carbon. It's from a few causes, either dirt ingestion from running a dull chain, it's the most common cause I see, or bad gas, so you can scrape it right off. You get enough of that in your engine and that can blow it by itself. Carbon is a hard material, especially when it builds up. Pop the piston out. Yeah, see, nasty. Nasty, nasty. Always make sure, run a sharp chain, clean your air filter, and run good gas. It's the best thing you can do. These are the 4 bolts I was referring to. As you can see here, I'm tightening them. I'm doing that because they should not be able to be tightened. Each one of these I got about a 1/4 turn out of. That's enough looseness in these with the age that they're getting onto that to suck air. That's the main cause of failure that we determined for this saw. Was an air leak from the base. You should not be able to turn those screws in at all. It was just a bad design that Husky made. I know a lot of die-hard Husky guys think that they can do no wrong, but some of the stuff that they've built over the years is pretty idiotic. I believe using coarse thread bolts in a magnesium base is one of those things with no Loctite. That's just my opinion. As you can see here, these the crankshaft and that collar, spacer, whatever you want to call it, they're on there pretty firm from the years of use. So what I'm doing here is I'm threading that on to give me something to grab onto and popping it off. You just pull up on the crank against the crankcase so that you can pry the bearings and crankshaft and everything out of the case itself. Like that. And it just pops right out. You can see it's pretty melted. These cases will warp where that collar meets on there, and that's another failure point. I'll make another video once I put one of these together. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Yeah, just trying to keep this rolling. Having a lot of fun doing these, and I really enjoy it. So, thanks.